Welcome to KAJ Politics Live, the show where politics meets clarity. Here we go beyond headlines to provide context, insight, and perspective on the forces shaping power today. And today we have with us David Deighton. He is the creator of Triptych Dialogue, an art experiment in bridging societal divides by redefining how we talk to one another. His goal is rekindling our social connections in person in this age of digital echo chambers. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, David. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe, especially in the US, will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about bridging political divides. We'll talk about this and we'll talk about much more. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that the audience knows who they are listening to.
Well, my name is David Deighton, and I'm French. I live in the United States for over 20 years, and I'm a conceptual artist, an experimental artist. And for the last 6 years, I've been working on speaking to strangers in a politically divided time, finding bridges that we could connect with people on the most taboo of subjects, on politics, without getting upset at one another, finding non-confrontational methods of speaking to one another without, especially on politics.
Absolutely, absolutely, David. So why does David have to do it? David is an artist. He can be busy in his art, earn lots of money, and then let things settle for themselves, and let politicians do what they need to do. Let people understand it for themselves. Why does David have to do it? Which is supposed to be a work of social activists as well as politicians.
Mm, right. So I think we have to go in different directions, and I'd rather do what I know what to do from the bottom, if you like, from a groundwork, foundational work, from working with individuals that feel often powerless when it comes to politics. Right? They feel like the politicians make their own decisions, and it doesn't reflect their own points of view. They feel cheated by their elected representatives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I want to offer tools, or explore at least these tools, that people can use in every day to create a political action, right, in everyday discourse. And for that, it's to not only create bridges, but create methods of interaction. We often, in France as well as in the United States, a lot of people refuse to approach the subject of politics in fear of having a confrontation with a family member, with a friend, or a coworker, or a stranger. So they just avoid the subject altogether. And and to me, that's the opposite of what should happen. We should have these conversations, having meaningful conversations on important subjects, especially the ones that are taboo. And as an artist, that's important as well. Uh, Artists like myself considered taboos, or the forbidden, to be things that we should look into and find out why, and see which ways we can approach these subjects. Not in the aspect of making it confrontational, but to see why, and to see what that looks like in an artistic manner. And I use abstract artwork, art installations, as well as performance art, in order to explore this. And and at the beginning, as an artist, of course, doing such things in galleries or formal settings seemed the natural course, but seemed to have lacking the power that it would have in unexpected areas. So I now bring my installations, my performance art pieces into public areas where I'm not expected. For example, I bring them into national parks in the United States, in areas where free speech areas are protected. In the US, they have designated areas for that type of expression, may it be religious, political, or whatever. I go in there and I bring artwork, and I invite the public to participate with me. I often ask them questions, always the same three non-confrontational political questions, and I show them that we can use these questions, we can use them with other people, and I invite them to have discourse with other people as I represented it in, for example, in a national park in these free speech areas. And I don't really have answers as much as I explore and I discover things along the way. That I then add into my project. Triptych Dialogue is the name of this art project, and find it fascinating. I found years ago that I'd be having big arguments with people with different political persuasions as mine, and in reality, but it hasn't been the case at all, because I ask the questions and I listen. I actively listen to what people have to say without thinking of what I'm going to respond and exchange to facts or opinions that they say that I might be against mine, my points of view. I just try to listen in and be there for that person at that time. Uh, and um, and if they ask me questions, of course, I'll answer. But often that's not the case. People just need to get it out there, to say what they have to say. And they need somebody to listen, because when we're online all the time on our digital devices, uh, we're overloaded with information and opinions and facts, and we don't have a chance really to respond, to say what we have on our minds. And there's nothing more powerful than face to face, in person. And that's what I do with my artwork, in person, face to face, real conversations, listen in, um, and let people be heard. Hmm. I hope
Absolutely,
that makes sense.
David.
Yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely, David. So what happens there? You bring in the art installation, then that place people talk. Do you answer to them, or they talk amongst themselves, and that brings about what you intend to,
Mm,
the
mm,
way you
mm,
want to
mm.
intend to bridge the divide.
Yes. So what usually happens is one on one. It's me and a participant, a stranger that I just met, for example, in a national park. Uh, and what happens is I'll have an art installation that brings in interest, right? Or like, what is this? What is this doing here? And that sparks the conversation, because, well, how do you speak to a stranger out of the blue, right? We often we just talk about the weather or about family or where you're from. I want to get to the depth of things quickly, so I have an instrument, a tool, and that's a piece of artwork. And then from there, we move on. If they ask what it's about, I tell them what it's about, and I invite them to answer three non-confrontational political questions. And often, what they say is, "Oh, that's impossible. I want to hear what these questions may be," because all political questions will be confrontational in people's mind. And and then I proceed to ask them the questions. I often record their voices and responses. So that's another tool, if you like, the microphone. And I ask them, here's the questions. And for your listeners in India, or your listeners in France, or your listeners in the US, or wherever it is, just change the word of the country to yours. And the first question I ask them is, how would you describe the political system of the United States of America? And then I listen, quietly listen, and actively listen to what they have to say. And I try not to get triggered. That's super important. We often get triggered when we don't hear something we agree with. It upsets us, and we want to respond and correct it. I try to let that go, and I keep on listening until we get to the second question. This is usually a very heated first response. They're very excited. And the second one I ask them is, describe your feelings or reactions to the current state of US politics, of French politics, of Indian politics. And then they're getting more into the emotional aspect of it. Now, I must admit, the first question, often people don't describe like a systemic structure of government. They're really talking about their feelings or emotions already in that first question. And they often find that the second question is a repeat of their first one, which is interesting. But it's very emotionally loaded. And on the third one, I kind of, when they're finished, I give them a game where they have to finish the sentence. And I ask them politics, for them to finish the sentence. Politics in India, in the United States, and I leave that blank, and then they finish that sentence. And by that time, and this doesn't usually take long, on average, it only takes 2 minutes and 37 seconds. At that time, I ask them to give me one word that gives them a summary, a resume of everything they said, just one word. And the word that they give me might be chaos, hope, it might be democracy, corruption, all these words, hundreds and hundreds of words from all the encounters I've had. I have a collection of all hundreds of these words. And that word is the one that's the most important to them in the moment. And then we leave it at that. They usually don't have any more questions. They're just so happy that somebody listened to them about politics. I actually sometimes have people that actually cry from so much release that comes out, like this abscess that's been ruptured, and it comes out. Finally, somebody listened to them. And then if they're in a national park, they go off for a hike and they come back later in the day and I'm still there. And that one last word, that final word, they often come back and say, it's not corruption anymore. The word is anything. It could be anger. It could be outcomes. But the word is evolving. So they've been thinking about it and already having a conversation either with themselves or with other people in their group. And for me, that's all I'm looking for. That's the bridge, is an invitation to make that conversation happen and for more people to discuss these things. And that demands first to have questions that are not that do not trigger other people, right? That are non-confrontational. And then of course for there to be somebody who listens. And I invite people to do that after they have a chance to get it out. Then they should be the listener. And that's part of the art performance aspect of my project, art Triptych Dialogue. Yeah. Mm.
Absolutely. So, David, how do you decide what position to take on any particular answer? Because they might be taking any answer. How do you decide? Is it your personal position, or
Mm.
is it the position of Santa Claus that everything should be good in the world? How do you
Oh,
decide that? It can lead to problems.
I want to be as honest as possible in the moment. First of all I did was listen, so there's nothing for them to judge me about, except maybe the way I'm dressed or what my appearance or the tone of my voice or questions. And maybe nonverbal communication. Was I nodding at the time? I try not to, if I'm in agreement, or frown if I disagree. I try to be as neutral as possible so people can say what they have to say. Uh, but at the end, if at the end of our exchange, if they have said something that is truly against my core beliefs, if they have said something racist or just so factually inaccurate or off the charts, as far as I'm concerned, I'll or if they called me, for example, well, they didn't call me, but they raged against Democrats, the left, which they might use some derogatory term like libtard is a favorite one these days from people on the right to describe the left. I will tell him at the end of the conversation, I will tell him, that libtard you were talking about, I'm actually one of them. And I disagree with pretty much everything you said, except one thing. And that one thing I'll tell them will be something that I captured during when I was listening, and it's usually not a fact or opinion that I'm agreeing on here. It's an emotion. Is if they were angry about the state of affairs in US politics, I will say, I am as well. I'm that libtard, yes. And I'll use that derogatory term on myself, right? Because they use that term generally, but I'll put them on myself to give it a human face. But then I will tell them also as a bridge that I am also angry as they were angry. And that's the bridge. The bridge is usually not fact or opinion because it really doesn't matter if we agree with somebody that has the same values as us, but specifically with people of the opposition, people that we see as the opposition or the enemy or whatever it is, to find an emotional connection. And that's the one I pull out, and that's the one I share. Because it's disarming in a sense, but it also shows the humanity that we both have. That libtards are angry too, and usually from that I can see in their faces like, oh well, you're not like they usually say, well, you're not like the rest of them, and I know that's a win for me. And I know from experience when I meet people in different places and say, "Oh, you're David. You're the guy from Triptych Dialogue." Yes, my friend answered those questions or was part of one of your art installations or whatever. Uh, I know that they're having these conversations, and I know that they're connecting with others. And to me, this is why I do it, is from these small moments where I find other people are engaging with others on a subject they would never have done before, and because things are becoming more and more divided in the country I'm living in the United States, and people are very sectarian. They're staying within their own in groups and in their own echo chambers with their own points of view, and they refuse to go outside, and they're demonizing the opposition. Um, but when it happens face to face, all those things seem to crumble, and we see the humanity in the other person. And that's an opportunity to be able to share one's own opinions and points of view when you're being asked. And those things can't happen really online when we're on our digital devices, but they can happen in person. So we have to create an environment, a space for those things to happen. And once again, that's my objective. Yes, yeah, that's the
Right,
objective.
right,
Mm,
David. So,
mm.
what are the challenges that you face in doing what you do at that point, especially during your, discussions about this? And secondly, do such discussions make you more optimistic or pessimistic
Ooh.
in terms of the digital divide, that it is going to end or it is not going to end?
Oh yeah, yeah. That yes, that very very good question. In the first part is um, how to deal with the emotions that you're feeling when these conversations are taking place, and I call that triggering. I mean, I'm in the U.S., tons of guns, people get triggered. um, the response that we have, the inner response that we have to something that we disagree with. We hear a word that really is emotionally charged for us, and it's often the opposition that uses this word, and we take it a certain way, and we get triggered. I try to isolate that trigger in my mind so that I can put it aside as quickly as possible, so I can keep on listening actively to the person speaking with me. And it's not easy. It just takes practice, though. I must admit, the first couple of years, I was certainly triggered regularly, and I wasn't actually listening to what people were saying because I was quite upset by some of the things I was hearing. That's the trigger. But the outcome of any trends I've been noticing through these hundreds of exchanges, I guess thousands now, um, is it's amazing. It's that last word is or what people talk about are often is full of anger. They're upset. They're disappointed. But then at the end, the last word is often one of hope. They have hope that things will There'll be reconciliation, that people will be able to find some understanding, or they'll start listening to one another. They're totally on board. Almost, 95% of them, but just the clear majority of them, that really what they want is for more harmony. Um, but we live in a world where this harmony is constantly being attacked through on our online devices, by being on social media or whatever, by outrage, by what captures our eyeballs and our attention onto these platforms, is not based usually on harmony, especially when we're talking politics here, right? It's one of drawing us in so that we can get further and further into some form of extreme that will trigger things within us, and get more engagement on the platforms. And that's one thing. But in person, and what I'm noticing is definitely people want more cohesion. They want more harmony. And they need to be heard. That I've noticed. Years at the very beginning of this, I did an online experiment for 1 year. I joined the platform of Instagram and explored political disinformation and misinformation. And I wanted to do this for 1 year. So every day I would try to post a video or an image, and they would be they would be abstract. Some were humorous. Some were about cognitive biases. Some were just whatever's going through my mind that day. But what I would do is during that time, I would try to reach out to people with a different political persuasion than mine. So I explored the far right and the fringe groups, many of them who are in power today in the United States, of that had social media platforms, are actually Benny Goodman is now within government, for example. He was just getting started on social media platforms, and I'd have exchanges with him, and it was just always constantly about finding blame and having trying to be right, and to be right and mightier than the other. And So yeah, okay, that's what happens. That's what's expected these days. That's the norm of what we expect in political discourse. However, I noticed it was pretty blatant. I was banned, or a thing called shadow banned, half a dozen times by Instagram, because apparently they didn't like the fact, the algorithm didn't like the fact that I was not staying in my artist group, and I was reaching out to go to people with different political persuasions or different professions. I wasn't staying where I was supposed to be. Now, to stay in my in group, to stay in my echo chamber, to stay in
Right.
where I was supposed to be. And that right there, that really helped me to push me to go to do this activity face to face in person. I've mostly an anonymous political artist before that did things under different names, and now I had to go in person. I found, use face to face, be out there, um, and that really transformed me and changed me immensely. It hasn't changed my values. It's certainly made my commitment to liberal democracy even more solid than it was before. Um, However, I don't get triggered as much, which is helpful, and uh, and I can see the humanity in my opponent, and I put that in quotation marks because I don't really see them as opponents anymore. Um, and Yeah, it's a beautiful journey for sure. And the people that have used my questions in their lives have told me the same as well. And that's just feels fantastic. Yeah, it just feels good. Yeah, talking about politics makes you feel good. Imagine that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely, David. So, how do you keep yourself motivated? Because the problem is big and there is only one David Deighton. and you need
Mm,
perhaps hundreds and hundreds of them. So
mm.
uh, how do you keep on yourself motivating, or do you want to expand it something like in a bigger movement where there will be such dialogues in almost every known place in the US?
Right. So I'm not a marketer. Like a business. I'm not into business marketing. But I'm very much involved in the artistic expression of things. And so it's what I do. It's in my essence. So I follow that, and I find my motivation comes from the responses of the people I meet, and sometimes people out of the blue. In unexpected at a dinner table, speaking with new people, and I find out they know about it as well, and it's not something I advertise. It's just the people that have had a chance to speak to someone else, and or and they can and just to stay on that subject. Other people invite strangers over to dinner or have a meal together, and they have prompted questions of talking about politics. That's something other people enjoy doing. There's creative groups where they have a new speaker come in from time to time, and they focus on issues such as active listening or uh, political dialogue. There's a group called Braver Angels here in the US. They take a group of conservatives and a group of liberals or progressives, and they sit down and they have several days of civil conversation to discuss various points. Uh, and there's lots of methods. I'm certainly not alone. There's on a podcast I was a guest on. They told me it was I'm part of the bridging movement. I didn't even know there was such a thing, of where people try to bridge across the political divide using different methods. And apparently, that's what I've been doing all these years. The so the motivation is it's just a constant area of discovery. First of all, how it transformed me inside, from being angry all the time and angry about what was going on in the country I'm living in, and now even more so in France, where political polarization is on the rise, and far right groups are just a few votes away from gaining power. Populist movements, left and right across Europe, um, and that's a motivation that that whatever action I can do, or whatever I can, however I can participate, now's the time to do it, rather than tomorrow. The trends are showing, um, not a collapse, but a withering away or erosion of democratic principles. Um, and so that's a motivation. When you see that happen, you want to do more of it, um, and engage with more people, listen, and engage and participate, and do something now. And other people might have more violent methods. Mine are all non-confrontational. There's something for everyone, um, and I appreciate, I appreciate when people come back with feedback or what they think, or it's part of a great exchange, right? A great human experience. Um, those are all my motivations, and finally, of course, uh, for I have a daughter, and for the future of my daughter, I want her to be represented in in her future, and for that to happen, I need to act, and that's at the center of my project, certainly. Mm,
Absolutely,
mm,
absolutely. There is so much to learn about all this from you, David, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more about
mm.
this, learn, be a part of your what of the things that you are doing. What's the best way for them to do so?
They should they should go to this new website I just launched last week. They're going to see lots of different art projects on this theme of everything we were talking about, and different expressions of it. and hopefully they'll find it entertaining as well. There's a lot of videos and images on it, and it's the website is www.Triptych Dialogue, and there you got to grab a pencil and write this down because triptych is written TRIPTYCH dialogue DIALOGUE.com. Triptych Dialogue together.com. It's a complicated word. It's got a whole story behind it, but that's for another episode. Yes, Triptych
Absolutely.
Dialogue.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Politics Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.